Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is AY Goldman, and together with Shaya Halpin, we opened the Helpline, which is a UK-based organization which takes calls from the Jewish community across the UK and further afield. We're there for anybody who needs a listening ear. It's a totally anonymous helpline. That means you can call and it's totally anonymous. Currently, we take around 2,000 calls a month, and we are there for anyone who's going through any type of struggle, any type of difficult moment. And I think we're all gathered here tonight because we are all, as the nation of Israel, in as one, feeling the pain of our brethren in Israel. And in fact, when our colleagues who are not from the nation of Israel ask us, do you have any family in Israel? And it's almost laughable because we have millions of brothers and sisters in Israel. We all feel like we have millions of brothers and sisters in Israel. And all of us are going through such uncertainty and feeling that what we wish we could do more for our brethren who are there, who've got children on the front line. And that's why we've all gathered here tonight to hear from Debbie. Debbie Grass is the founder of Tahel, who she for years and years has been advocating for women and girls who have suffered abuse. And she's a very well known psychotherapist, and she's a world-renowned speaker and lecturer and trainer. Debbie herself has children on the front line and actually lives in the firing line in the south of Israel. And it's a great honor and privilege that Debbie's taken time out under such difficult and trying circumstances to come and give us, who are far away from Israel, the encouragement and the chizuk to be able to keep on going, to find strength inside ourselves, to be able to live with the situation that we're in, and hopefully be able to do more for one another. So if it's my honor and privilege to hand this over to Debbie.
Okay, so Erev Tov. Any of you feel comfortable, you can open your cameras. It's always good to see some faces. And I think it's clear to all of us that we're at war. And I think I disagree. I don't think it's just those of us in Israel who are suffering. I think basically all of you are suffering as well, because 15 days ago, our whole world turned upside down. I mean, Shabbat morning at 6:30 in the morning, I live in Ashkelon, and when the alarms went off, so we ran into the mamad, into the safe room, but we're sort of used to running into the safe room. And it was only after we did it 3 or 4 times that we started realizing something's different this time. And all of us, every single one of us on this Zoom, our whole world turned upside down. Because basically what happened is our basic assumptions about so many things were shattered 2 weeks ago. Our assumptions about safety, our assumptions about the Israeli army, our assumptions about the army being able to protect us, our assumptions about the government, about security, our assumptions about knowing and knowing what's going on and being able to, we're so used to getting firsthand news, and now we don't know what's going on to so many people. Now, when we talk about crisis is an event that shatters our basic assumptions about life. And what happens sometimes is that a crisis can throw us into trauma. And what I'd like to talk about in the short time that we have together is maybe horrible atrocities going on. And we
Debbie, I think you're frozen. I think we've lost Debbie. You have to mute yourself, Debbie.
Yeah, sorry, Zoom disappeared. How many of you have a bank account? I'm sure that everybody here is raising their hand. How many of you have a storage room? A lot of you. How many of you have a cupboard in the kitchen with food? Probably every one of you. And now I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you have a toolbox to prevent trauma? Now think about it. We all know we have to put money aside so that we can afford things. We know we have to put food aside so that we can, and yet we don't realize that someone's mic is open. We don't realize that we also need to have skills to prevent traumatization. I mean, we live in a world full of crisis and trauma. Now, some people have been comparing this to 9/11. We as the Jewish people, it's worse than 9/11. But they're comparing it to 9/11. And let's go back to 9/11 1 minute. When those two towers were hit, the fabulous mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, started working right away. And in no time, he had everything activated and he saved the city of New York. And he rebuilt the city. And for many years, New York had never thrived like it did after him. How did he do it? How did Rudy Giuliani rebuild a city right away with one of the worst atrocities? Well, it turns out that 6 years earlier, he sat with a bunch of his advisors and he said, what would happen if there was a gas leak in one building in New York City and that gas leak exploded in one building? How would we handle it? A plan for one building in New York City. And they made a plan. And he took that plan and he put it in and happened. What did he do? He just pulled out the plan. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that we need resources. And we need to be able to access these resources so that, and certainly those of us who live in Israel. The first thing is, we on hand are all the stresses we have, and on the other hand, our resources. And usually, the way we live is our stresses and our crises are always so much heavier than our resources. Now, originally, I built this for a 4-hour workshop. And if we were sitting around together for 4 hours, I would divide you up into pairs and have you make a list of everything that is stressing you today. Because stresses can be physical, they can be cognitive, they can be behavioral, they can be emotional. We live under extreme stress. But we also have resources. And most of us aren't even aware of them. Two things that bring you joy. Think of one thing that brings you joy. And then think of a second thing that brings you joy. You can open your eyes and maybe later on write it down, because that's also important. When I am going through a really tough time, I have to know what helps me, what can bring me joy. Now, as you can tell from my accent, I grew up in the United States. And we had nursery rhymes that, I don't know if you have the same ones in England, but we had nursery rhymes that we learned from 2 years old. And one of those nursery rhymes was Humpty Dumpty. And how did it go? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Now, personally, I think it's a horrible nursery rhyme. And why would we sing this to 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds? but really it's for you and me. Humpty Dumpty was an egg. And what happened? Something happened and Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. And when he fell off the wall, he was so broken that nobody could put him together again. But what could we have done for Humpty Dumpty? What could we have done for Humpty Dumpty? We could have put a net next to the wall. And then if Humpty Dumpty fell, he would have had a soft landing in a net. And he wouldn't have broken. And then he would have been able to get up and stand again. So what we want to do with this toolbox is build ourselves a net. Build ourselves a net so that we can function, so that we can be valuable help, so that we can move forward. Now, Winston Churchill, who was once your prime minister during World War II, is quoted as saying, "It is much better to sometimes have a panic feeling beforehand and get into a panic when things happen." So what was Churchill saying? Basically, he's saying every so often, we might even have to stop and think of what worst thing could happen and prepare ourselves so that we can be calm when these things do happen. And what I'd like each of you now is to imagine what your toolbox looks like. Now, if you're a real macho guy, it could be it's aluminum and it looks like the toolbox that the guy who comes to fix your washing machine brings. It could be your toolbox looks like a quilted sewing box. It could be your toolbox is a wicker basket. Imagine your toolbox, and now let's start putting some things in. The first thing, if we are dealing with a crisis, is there's 5 things we have to do. Recognize that this is traumatizing. Recognize that, no, I can't go on with my day. Something very serious is going on here, and it's affecting me. Number 2, it takes all of our energy. We have expectations. Number 3, make a routine, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Debbie?
Sorry.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
I'm
sometimes
back. I'm
the internet sometimes being intermittent. I don't know if it's the situation in Israel.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, we're with you. We're up to our toolbox. We're getting our toolbox in.
Yeah.
Still frozen.
It's still frozen.
Can't hear you.
All right. Let me see if I can move it to let me see where. Okay. All right, hopefully it'll be
Debbie, I think we've lost you.
Okay, let's just give it a couple of minutes. Hopefully she's moving around.
It's the first time we've done a Zoom from a war zone. So
I'm sure she'll be back up in a couple of minutes.
All right, we're going to try to move it to a different internet source, see if that helps anything. My daughter will try. Okay. Everybody back? See me? Still frozen?
you're still frozen. We can hear you. It's a bit intermittent.
It's not very good at the moment.
Should I move it to a different source? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. One more better, thanks. Um, okay. So we were talking about, okay, so far good?
Yeah, you're a bit frozen, a bit slow.
Because there's so many people on. So, should I move forward? Do you hear it or?
The hearing is fine. I just think it's now is the hearing we can hear you, but just sometimes the bandwidth is a bit low, so it's a bit intermittent.
I think if we all just turn off our videos, then the data that's going into Israel is going to be lower, and also we don't need to watch the video as well. So I think it'd be easier if we all just didn't have the video on. And then the sound is much lower bandwidth, much lower data.
Thank
I
you.
hope you don't mind me suggesting.
No, thank you. Good suggestion. It may be an issue. I've just spoken to Debbie. It may be an issue with Israel. We're just waiting for Debbie to rejoin.
I think we'll. Okay, how are we doing? Still muted?
No, yeah,
Still no good?
we can hear you. We can hear you now, Debbie. Yeah. So if we can
Okay,
go over the
all
3
right.
points.
So, okay. So we talked about there are 5 points that we have to take into consideration when we talk about trauma. The first one is recognize traumatic. The second, accessing your resources. What resources are available to you? And number 5, seeing the people around you and how are they doing. So let's talk a minute about resources. I invite each of you after this workshop to make a list of what your resources are. Now, what do we mean by resources? In order for something to be a resource, it has to have 3 things. It has to be cheap, light, and accessible. What does that mean? I mean, if a resource costs $50,000 and I don't have $50,000, that's not really a resource for me. A resource must be cheap, light, and easily accessible. All of us have resources. And some of them we don't even realize we have. Yesterday, I spent 5 hours in Ashkelon working with people whose homes were totally destroyed by the missiles. And they're now living in a hotel and they're petrified. So one of the resources we all have is we live in a house or an apartment. Our families are resources. If we have a bank account, if we have a car, these are all resources. And during a time of crisis, we have to recognize what resources are available to us. Also recognizing who are the human resources. Who are the people in your life that you can depend on? And make a list of them. Who are the people that when you need help, they're there for you? And sometimes you might say, well, I have a best friend. I can talk to her about everything. But when you really have a crisis, is she the one who comes through for you? Is she the one who's there for you? Who are the people, the human resources that you have? When this war broke out, Shabbat morning, so slowly we started hearing things from neighbors who heard things. And then Motzei Shabbat, we could turn on the radio. And my sister lives in America. And she had 2-day Yom Tov. And all I wanted to do was call my sister. And Monday morning at 6 a.m, I finally called her when her Yom Tov was over. And I burst out crying. And I said, don't worry about me. I'm okay. I've just waited to talk to you. I've waited to be able to cry. Who can you cry with? Who can you cry with that they'll hold you, that they'll listen, that they won't right away try to tell you everything's fine, don't worry? Who are the human resources you have in your life? Viktor Frankl, one of my heroes who went through the Shoah, he's quoted as saying, when we are no longer able to change ourselves, when we can't change the situation, the only thing we can do is change ourselves, is reach deep inside of ourselves and find the strengths to move forward. We all know that we can't change this nightmare that has unfolded, but we can find the resources to get through it. So how do we do that? Well, first thing is unplug. Don't listen to the news 24/7. The news is not going to give us strength. It diminishes us. It weakens us. So of course, we have to know what's going on. But we also have to know how much is depleting our sense of strength. Unplugging, having time with your family without the radio on. All of these things are part of our toolbox. Building a routine. Now, why is building a routine so important? Because what happens basically is when we are in crisis, our brain is secreting the SOS hormones of cortisol and adrenaline. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu made our body this way for a good reason. If I am standing in the jungle and a lion is attacking me, my brain will secrete those organs, those hormones, so that I can fight, so that I can flight, so that I can run. Well, what happens if your brain is secreting those hormones for 15, 16 days straight? It uses up all of our resources and all of our energy. But then, if we have a routine and we keep to our routine, we get up in the morning, we say Moda'ani, Nitilat Yadayim, brush your teeth, daven, get dressed, whatever your morning routine is, and you're sticking to your routine, all of a sudden the brain gets a different message. Obviously, she's not in a jungle being chased by a lion because she's doing her everyday routine. Things are calm. I can send out the calming hormones. Routine helps us stay calm. Routine helps us feel less helpless in a situation where we feel totally helpless. It helps us deal with the unknown. At least I know what I have to do right now. And if you can't keep your same routine, build a new one. Build a new routine that works for you now. What we'd like to do is teach the brain to secrete the hormone of oxytocin. Oxytocin is often called the love hormone. It's a hormone that calms us down, that makes us feel good. 4 days ago, I was working in one of the hotels where the people in Ashkelon were being housed, those who totally lost their homes. And one little 5-year-old boy kept coming over to me and telling me how scared he is, and this is really scary, and he's really scared. So I said to him, Ophir, do you want to learn a game? And he said, yeah. So I said, Ophir, I'm going to teach you the butterfly. I'm running around the hotel teaching it to everybody he met. So what is the butterfly? You put your 2 arms straight in front of you, cross your right over your left, see the X, turn them over, and touch your shoulders. Down to your elbows, up to your shoulders. Down to your elbows, up to your shoulders. Let's try it again. 2 arms straight in front of you. Right arm over the left. See the X. Turn it over. Touch your shoulders. Down to your elbows, up to your shoulders. Down to your elbows, up to your shoulders. Down to your elbows, up to your shoulders. Now, when we do the butterfly, our brain secretes oxytocin, which calms us down. It works very well with children, but it works for all of us when we heard horrific news, when we're just too sad, when we don't know where the people we love are, when we haven't heard from somebody and we're worried, we can use the butterfly. Another way of secreting oxytocin is take your right hand and put it on your heart. Think of someone you really love. Think of that person that you really love. See that person. Feel the love you have for that person. Think of someone who really loves you. See that person. Feel the love they have for you. Now, when you do this, when you put your hand over your heart and think of someone you love or someone who loves you, again, your brain secretes oxytocin, and that can calm you down and give you resources to move forward. Hugging someone, whether it's a baby, whether it's your daughter, whether it's a puppy, whether it's a kitten, oxytocin. And this is one of our ways of doing something physical that can calm us down. We've heard about breathing, and over again, they've told us that if we do breathing techniques, we can calm down. Now let's think about that for a minute. Why do breathing techniques calm us down? Well, if I'm in the forest and a lion is chasing me, how am I breathing? And that makes the brain realize that there is a crisis and send out those crisis hormones. But if I do relaxed breathing, a different message is coming to the brain. So how do we do that? You take your hands and you put them on your stomach. And then breathe out, breathe in so that you fill up your stomach. Breathe out so your stomach goes in. Breathe in, fill up your stomach. Breathe out so your stomach goes in. Breathe in, fill up your stomach. Breathe out, your stomach goes in. Basically, it's almost like we're creating a swing. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Now, when we do these techniques with our hand on our stomach, we can actually make sure that we are doing diaphragmatic breathing. And this is breathing that calms us down, that tells our brain, send out those calming hormones, send out the calming hormones. And this can relax us. And what we want to be able to do is be in a state where we can function, where we can think, where we can act, and not where we can be in a state of hypertension and we feel helpless, we feel out of control, we feel we don't know what we can do. One of the main things is self-compassion, understanding that these are really difficult times. Everything we thought we knew, everything we understood is being re-examined. We all promised the Holocaust would never happen again. And we heard all those chants of never again, etc. And suddenly, it happened within Eretz Yisrael. And that is terrifying. It's facing evil. And how do we face evil? Well, the only way to face evil is to have self-compassion and understand that we will get through this, that we will be okay, that we will make it to the other side, and that we have to work slowly with ourselves. We have to be good to ourselves. Often, what's so important is to set realistic goals, what you can actually do today. And one of the ways to do that is to make a short list, not a long list that is going to overwhelm you, that's going to throw you into panic, that's going to make you feel helpless. But every day, taking out a piece of paper and writing 5 things that you can do today. One thing that works very well with children is either to take a big whiteboard or a big piece of paper and the night before to write with them 5 things that we're going to do tomorrow and stand it in the kitchen or hang it on the refrigerator. And when they get up the next morning, there are guidelines. Okay, right now everything is scary. Right now, I don't know how to move forward, but here, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. These are things I can do today. Not 30 things on our list, a few things that we can accomplish. Understanding that right now, our energies are going to all these emotions that this crisis is causing, and that we have to see what are we capable of doing. Another way to release oxytocin is to do chesed. And they've done studies with groups where they had the same amount of oxytocin in their blood. And they sent one group to do chesed and the other group to just continue what they were doing. And they rechecked. And the group that did chesed had an enormous amount of oxytocin. Because when we do good, when we do chesed, we are putting good back into the world. Janice Stanfield once said, I can't do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do. And the only possible way to combat evil is by each of us putting a little chesed into the world. And your chesed, and your chesed, and your chesed, and your chesed. This is the only way that we can combat the evil that we're witnessing. Talk to somebody. Now, most of the time we have to function. We have to take care of our families, we have our jobs, we have our work, and we have to go on with our lives. But find 5 minutes a day to talk to somebody where you can talk about how you feel, where you can express your emotions, where you can get it out so that you can start moving forward. During a time of crisis, it's usually when we throw out the window our self-care, taking care of ourselves. And any of us who has gotten on an airplane, as soon as we get on the plane, the first thing they tell us is if there is a crisis on that plane, oxygen masks will drop down. And what do they tell you? Put the mask on yourself and then on your child. And I often wonder how any of us will be able to do that. But it's true, because if we don't give ourselves oxygen, we can't help anyone else. Now is the time to take care of yourself. And there are 5 ways: eating, sleeping, exercise, relaxation, and hobby. Making sure you get enough sleep. And you might say, well, that's impossible. I'm so worried. I don't know what's going on. I haven't spoken to my son who's out there. What's going on? But getting the sleep you need is crucial to dealing with crisis. Eating in the way that works for you. Getting some form of exercise. And one of the things we all learned from Corona is you can even exercise in the house. Doing relaxation techniques, whether it's breathing, whether it's yoga, whether it's just sitting and listening to music, what calms you down? And if you have a hobby, when you feel really stressed out, taking a few minutes to sit and do that hobby. Putting those things into the toolbox. What does that mean? It means being aware of the things that calm me down. During the Corona, one of the things that made me panic is I was running out of books. Were closed. We had no delivery never touch those books. Those are my toolbox. And I was sitting on this week and I was thinking, wow, I had to pull my toolbox out. The libraries are closed. I can't leave the house. No bookstores are open. So what is it you need to help you stay calm during a time of crisis? Maybe I'll stop and see if there's questions somebody would like to ask. You can either open your mic or write it in a chat if someone has a question.
Can you go back to the 5, because you were cut up, the 5 main points that you were talking about, please?
The 5 self-care or the 5 points at
the first, both of those lists were cut out. I only got 1 and 2. So one is traumatizing, one is affecting me, but I haven't got the other 3. Thank you.
Okay, what is traumatizing? Making realistic expectations.
Sorry?
Keeping your routine.
The original list of what the original recognizing the list.
Recognizing your resources.
We're cutting out again.
It's the five things in the toolbox there.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The self-care or the first 5 things we talked about?
First 5 things and then the self-care.
Okay, so the self-care
is cutting out.
Right. Let me try to move again to a different internet and see if that helps.
It's okay. It's
okay?
Okay at the moment, yeah.
Okay. The 5 self-care are eating, sleeping, exercise, relaxation, and hobby. And the 5 things we do at the beginning is, number 1, recognize that this is a trauma. 2, have realistic expectations. 3,
relaxation,
building a routine. 4, accessing your resources. And 5, being aware of the people around you and how they're doing.
The original 5, where you start off, 1 was traumatizing, 1 is affecting me. The original 5 things on the list.
Those are the original. I just
no, you said you had 5 things.
Repeated them. I'm not sure.
No, not the relax.
It was after Churchill. I think you said something with Churchill and then it cut. So cheap, light, accessible, maybe?
Right after Churchill, I listed the 5 things we have to do when we recognize we're going through a crisis. Number 1 is realizing this is traumatizing. Number 2 is having realistic expectations of what you're capable of doing now. Number 3 is trying to hold on to your routine. Number 4 is accessing your resources that you can use. And number 5 is being aware of the community surrounding you to see who around you needs your help.
Can I ask a question after anyone?
Yes.
How do you stop yourself? I'm sure I'm the only one, but how do you stop yourself from over phoning your children to check that they're okay? And the second question is, when you actually get them online, which I'm not in that place with some of them, how do you fake your conversation? Because it's fake. So how do you have a conversation with someone when you don't actually know when you're going to speak to them again?
Okay. So I'm going to answer the question backwards. I'm the one they're calling all the time. I live in Ashkelon. Our city has been hit over and over and over again. So every time a missile goes off in Ashkelon, all of my kids are calling me and my grandchildren are calling me. So first of all, maybe setting up times once or twice a day that you can call. In other words, having a set time will make it easier for the other person. Number two is you can say to them that if there is an alarm, a missile in their area, could they just call and let you know they're okay? How do you fake it? Hey, we're the parents. We're good at that. I'll just tell you a story. I've been doing a lot of babysitting because my daughter, the doctor, has gone in for 28-hour shifts and her husband's called up. And a few days ago, right after the war started, I was babysitting for 4 kids and all the lights went off in the whole yishuv. And all of a sudden, from upstairs comes a flood of water and we're knee deep in water. And I have no idea what's going on. So all I kept saying to the kid is, everybody's on the couch. Nobody leaves the couch. Grandma's going to take care of this. Everybody on the couch. No one leave the couch. Grandma's going to take care of this. And by saying that over and over again, first of all, it calmed them down because I said, I'll take care of it. Second of all, I could stay calm because I knew they were all going to stay on the couch. All right, then I had to wade up through the water, find an opening in the bathroom to start draining and figure out what was flooding the entire house. But the point is that saying it over and over again before you get on the phone call to them, what they need from me now is to stay calm. What they need from me now is to stay calm. So that when you call them, you actually can. And really, I think also do some of your relaxation techniques before you call. Because if you're going to call hysterical, it's just one more thing for them to worry about. And if you can stay calm during that phone call, they're actually more apt to call you and speak to you more often as well. Does that help at all?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just how to end a call when you don't know when you're getting the next one. So, you know, but what can we do?
Yeah. How do we end a call? And basically what everybody here is talking about is the unknown. Okay. I don't know when we're going to speak again. I don't know what's going to be. You know, I set things up for tomorrow. Before I set them up, I say to everybody, but we'll see what tomorrow brings. Because every day, the days are like 40 hours long and everything is so intense. So I think just saying to yourself, if you set up to speak tomorrow, so why don't we have a daily talk every evening at 6? If it doesn't work out for him, he'll tell you. But if you set it up, then there's something very calming about knowing when the next phone call. So I set things up with people, and sometimes I have to cancel them. Sometimes I have to move them. But by setting them up, I'm making them feel there's something known. Tomorrow at 5, I'm speaking with you. It might get changed, but I've set it up.
The kids don't have phones, so it's a bit different, but I don't want to take over this session. So thank you for everything.
The kids don't have phones. Okay, it makes it, as I said, we're all living in difficult times. So I guess it's about keeping ourselves calm, and it's about digging into our emunah and believing, I can't promise you when this war is going to end. And I can't promise you everybody's going to be okay. What I can promise you is that every single one of us has the resources to get through this. And I can also promise you that we're going to rebuild our nation, and we're going to rebuild Eretz Yisrael. And that's a promise. So I think if we know that, if we know that we're going to rebuild Am Yisrael and we're going to rebuild Eretz Yisrael and we're going to get through this, that's already seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. That's all we can really know right now. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I just feel too guilty to enjoy myself. Why should I take pleasure?
Mm-hmm. So I think the question is, how much and what are we balancing it with? In other words, if we're walking around miserable all day and we're then getting traumatized, we're not able to help people. We need to help our children. We need to help our grandchildren. We need to keep everybody moving and going. So I think it's finding the right balance. It's finding the things that we can enjoy so that we can help others, and also doing our part of davening or whatever else we're taking upon ourselves to help. I don't think we have to feel guilty if we laugh or if we enjoy a moment. I don't think that helps anybody if we're miserable 24/7. So I think it's finding that balance. My grandson had a bar mitzvah. His party was supposed to be Tuesday night right after the war broke out, and that Shabbat was supposed to be his bar mitzvah. And we found ways to make him a bar mitzvah. The army cleared it so he could go up to the Lebanon border and read from the Torah with his father, who's a soldier up there and in front of all the other soldiers. And then on Shabbat, we had a small minyan in the other grandparents' home. It was really hard because there were only 3 men who were over 13. All the others in the minyan were 13-year-olds who had just been bar mitzvah because the men weren't around. But there was joy at that bar mitzvah, and there was simcha at the bar mitzvah. So you can find joy, because if you don't, then we're letting evil win. That's the way I sort of look at it, is that we can't let evil win. So we have to be able to find the joy in the things that we should find joy in.
Thank you.
I think it's really hard for all of you, because in some ways it's harder to be far away. The people you care about are here. You have family here. You have friends here. You feel so helpless because you're so far away. But one of the things that helps all of us is hearing how everybody's behind us. And especially as world opinion is starting to change, we really need the support of all the Jews all over the world. That's so important. Somebody said they sent a question on the chat. Let me see what that is.
2 questions on the chat.
So, okay, what are the questions?
How can I stay calm and focus on going where I need to go? I'm feeling so aware of the anti-Semitism around us, and I have a tendency not to process it and keep it at bay, because I fear not being able to handle it all, as it is all too gruesome. Is it okay not to process it?
Okay, so first of all, sometimes we have to work on auto, and we can't process and we can't take it all in because it's just too horrible. So most of the time, that's what we do. We just go into dissociative mode, and we just don't let ourselves think about the horrors because we have to do what we have to do. And that's legitimate. But I do encourage you to find time to talk about it with someone for a few minutes, someone that you feel you can share things with, because that is important, because keeping it all bottled inside isn't healthy. And what was the second question? The other question was?
How to be able to go around your daily routine with being very aware of the anti-Semitism around.
It's really hard. It's really scary. Seeing the anti-Semitism everywhere. I think that's what happened to all of us. It's just like suddenly we saw how bad it really is. And the only thing we can do is know, what does a Kadosh Baruch Hu want from me today? What is my job today? How can I grow today? And it could be our job is really just to help our children get through this right now. There's a beautiful Hebrew poem that came out that for all the mothers who think they're not doing anything to help, basically just by being there with your children, you're helping build a mamad, a safety room inside of your child. And that in itself is very important. So doing whatever you feel you can do. I'm doing a lot of babysitting because right now I really feel that's part of my job. So what is our job right now? And thinking about, and remember, even just what chesed can I do today? What one chesed can I do today that can help move the scale so that evil doesn't win? We're talking about building a toolbox. We're not saying that we're all going to feel wonderful when you hang up from this Zoom, especially since the Zoom kept going in and out. But the idea is to take some tools and try to use them and try to see how can some of these tools help me. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling panicked, do the butterfly. If you feel like you just can't do anything, make a small list and just get a few things done. What can you do? What can help you today? Which friend can you talk to?
Can I just ask? My daughter's in seminary in Eretz Israel, and so I get the person who said that she tries not to speak to them often, because I also don't want to make my daughter stressed by me phoning her. But I found that, I don't know if it's a great tool for anybody else, but I find we have a lot of people here who have a lot of family members in Eretz Israel, and I find that if I take time out of my day just to check up on them and just to say hi, and if they need someone to talk to, I found it's also comfort for me that that we can talk about it together, and that if they have something to talk about, that we talk about it together, because we're both, I have my mother, my sister, my brother, my family, I have cousins, everything on both sides of the family, so it's very difficult. So everyone's going through the same thing, so it's all I found a comfort that every day I make a certain time, and I try and message as many people as I can, say, look, if you need to talk, and then you talk together, because if you talk together, it really does, I don't know, I feel better for it. I don't feel that I'm here in Gibraltar living it up. I feel that that you have to empathize with other people, and like people who come in and say, oh, are you okay? Is everyone okay? I get irritated by it. No, we're not okay. But then I feel that that's the way of dealing with it. We have to say, yes, physically, mentally, maybe we're not, but but if we talk together and you like bounce off each other, you feel that you have some comfort in talking to each other. Does that make sense?
Perfectly, because what we're talking about is, who are the people that you can help? Who are the people that can get support from you? And sometimes by giving them support, you yourself are getting support, for sure. And even with your daughter, as I said, just one short phone call every day. Make it
We've
light.
said a hi. We've said that we have to have a hi. A hi in the morning, I'm okay, good morning. And then the afternoon, a hi, and then I won't bother her. And then unless she wants me for something. She's very horizontal, but for me, for our sanity, just a hello. I'm fine, I'm good. So we don't overdo it, because if otherwise she says, Mummy, you're stressing. I'm not stressing. I'm fine. You stop stressing. So, it works both ways, really, I think.
We don't want them to have to take care of us. That's an important.
Exactly. I want her to know that I'm happy that she's there. If that's where she chooses to be. I think also a lot of people will think maybe we should bring our kids home, but they feel safer there. I think I would probably feel safer in Israel right now. You don't know what's around the corner here either. So, it's a very hard place to be in, I think. Thank you so much, It was very good.
Someone wrote on the chat, my kids in the army, they don't have phones. I keep checking the phone. Okay, so what can help you? What can help you when you can't speak to them? What will help you? Whether it's prayer, whether it's getting involved in something, whether it's just setting up a routine. It's really hard. I am not saying it's not hard. It's excruciating hard. I have 5 out there. But we don't really have a choice. We have to get through this. We have to get through this war. We have to get to a better place. And therefore, just trying to, don't think about tomorrow. Just right now, right this second, everything's okay. Breathe in, breathe out. Have a cup of tea. Breathe in, breathe out. Call a friend. Breathe in, breathe out. Help your daughter with her homework. Breathe in, breathe out. That's really all we can do.
Can I ask you, if you get them on the phone, like suddenly, how do you contain the conversation?
What does that mean? How do you contain it?
Like, you can't ask them any questions. You can't keep just giving brachas. They don't really want to hear about the weather. So what's your remit? How do you get through the conversation?
Make it short. It's great to hear your voice. I'm so glad that we can talk. Maybe if there's some little anecdote of somebody make it short, sweet. You heard their voice, they heard yours. And that's enough.
So you don't start saying you're going to be okay, everything's going to be okay.
No, I don't think they really want. Telling them everything's going to be okay, I'm not sure is really going to help. I think you're believing it and you're letting them know that. That's what's important. Letting them know you're okay so they don't have to worry about you is important.
I have a question.
Yes.
In Israel, I'm surrounded by people that were there and they went through all of this and that, whatever. Many of them were there, and almost everybody I know knows somebody that knows somebody, and everyone's sitting shiva all around and levi's every day. And I personally, I don't know. I mean, we're all in the news and everything, and it's here, so it's scary. But I don't know anybody that was there. I don't have any relatives, and that makes me feel so guilty that everybody suffered so much, and I'm here, and I don't know anybody personally. It makes me feel horrible, like it cripples me, the guilt.
There's 2 types of guilt. There's false guilt and there's true guilt. And false guilt always gets us in trouble. False guilt is when we feel guilty for something that we don't really have any reason to feel guilty about. And it always complicates us. So if I did something wrong and I feel bad about it and I try to make amends, that is a productive guilt. But what you're saying is that I feel guilty because I don't know anyone. So turn that around and say, okay, right now, I'm not with somebody who's sitting shiva. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? Look at it that way. What can you do? What can you add? What goodness can you do? But I understand it because everybody feels guilty that they're relieved even that they don't know that person, the next name that calls off. And that's very normal. And that's very normal, but it makes us feel guilty. Yes. Any other questions that anybody wanted us to react to or? the main thing to realize is you have resources. Sit and think, what are your kochot? What are your strengths? What are your resources? And right now, when it's really a horrible, horrible time, gather those resources and use them. And use them to help rebuild Am Yisrael, because that's what we have to do now. Turn it over to you, AY.
I just want to thank you, Debbie, for your time in trying circumstances and for being here. And I'm sure that everybody really got something from tonight's session. I certainly did, as always. And just want to thank you again. And we should only hear Besuras Tovos very, very soon. Children should all come back home safe and sound. And all of Am Yisrael's children should come home safe and sound.
Amen. Amen. And sorry for the internet. They must be doing something here tonight. So, okay.
Thank you, Debbie.
Laila Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kol hakavod. Thank you.
Thank you. It was amazing.
Much.